Welcome to the Wrestling Observer Podcast. This is night 2, Wrestlemania, my recap of what happened tonight. So we're going to talk first about Cody Rhodes being able to go ahead and dethrone the 1,316-day reign of Roman Reigns to become the undisputed WWE Heavyweight Champion. The undisputed WWE Champion, Universal Champion. Done. Completes the story. There's a lot of things we could say about what this means for the legacy of Roman Reigns. I think now, give him time off. If he's going to do something now where he's destined for Hollywood, he has projects to come up, whatever he is going to do now, that is now the time for that. The spotlight goes to Cody. And for Cody, the bigger picture that all this encompasses tonight is when I go back and think about, was it 2014, 2013, he leaves WWE, and then we see his run in Ring of Honor, in Impact Wrestling or TNA, and then we see the culmination of All Out, or excuse me, All In. I always do that all the time. And then the creation of All Elite Wrestling, which he is a pillar of what made that company, the number 2 company right now in the country or in the world, possible. For Cody, it encompasses everything. We've had redemption stories in WWE numerous times, right? When you think about, first of all, you go back to Drew McIntyre. His redemption story, going away, coming back, and redeeming himself in his glory. You know? He was going to be crowned champion tonight, but of course, Damian Priest, I called it. If you heard me, all this time way through, I kept thinking Damian Priest was going to cash in. They're not talking about it. What a time they're going to do it. They did it. And the way they did it with CM Punk and Drew McIntyre and their animosity with each other, causing the opportunity for Damian Priest to cash in. We'll talk about that shortly. But with Cody Rhodes and the fact that he gets to go ahead and he wanted to go ahead and get the chip off his shoulder. Bobby Lashley, the same way. Another person that was gone, made something of himself again, comes back, becomes heavyweight champion, right? He becomes a champion once again. And then here, Cody, who, when I thought about it 10 years ago, when he left, I didn't know he would find his way back. And because there was never a thought in my mind that Cody Rhodes was ever looked at as main event material by Vince McMahon or the company in general. Never thought about it. And it's also because of the fact that we saw him on our cameras for a long time. He was part of Legacy. He had done several gimmicks. Always found a way to get himself over with whatever gimmick he had. And he did it. And that's quite commendable for him. And then just being able to go ahead and find himself again, find who his real personality is on the indie circuit, going back out and working. And he found himself. And I'll tell you, it's like something about what he did to get himself out of all the mess that was going on. Remember? It was like, he really did accomplish a lot. New Japan Pro Wrestling. In one of those early times where you think about the fact that when you want to go ahead and get WWE to notice you again, you don't just, you can go to TNA, you can go over to other companies, but there's also something to be said about when you go over and you work in New Japan and Ring of Honor, because for whatever reason, the WWE, especially with Triple H at the time, he kept paying attention to those brands because he was looking for possible recruits to bring over to NXT when that project came to be. And he did that. It was 2016 that Cody had left. That's right. That's when he requested his release May 21st. And then think about it like this. Goes out to the independent circuit. Works in Evolve. And then works with Northeast Wrestling. And he's just going along. Pro Wrestling Guerrilla. Worked in the Battle of Los Angeles tournament. And that was the part I was thinking about. Okay, what caught my attention, that Cody got my attention once again, was not just when he went to Final Battle and worked Ring of Honor, but it was also something felt different when he took on Nick Aldis in a 2 out of 3 falls match at NWA 70. So Billy Corgan to come in. That's when NWA kind of got themselves back on the map again. People were paying attention to it. And we look, and Nick Aldis wins the match. And then for that point, he becomes a very long reigning NWA World Heavyweight Champion, right? And there's something about that point in time where Cody's out there, and then he works into TNA, and then he works into other organizations, and we're just paying attention because we see him on TV. After a couple of years, not on TV. And then we see the move to like, okay, there's bigger events out there. There's a stir. And him, Young Bucks, Kenny Omega, among others, whoever it was that got into the ear of Tony Khan to come up with the idea of let's do All In. And Ring of Honor produces it. And then we get to there, and then here we go. We have their competition. And to think that Cody Rhodes never wanted to become AEW World Heavyweight Champion. Wasn't worried about that. He decided no. He was more concerned about being in this company, and it was never about him being the champion here. Of course, that story's not going to get told. But when we look at this here, and it's like, we move forward. And Cody wants to become a WWE champion. It was what he wanted to become. And the fact that he decided to go make that switch back over when Triple H had much more push. And as they said, it was Triple H and Bruce Pritchard. They were able to convince to bring Cody back when Cody was making the inroads to make a return. And WWE, for their credit, this is what the new era really means to me for Triple H, when they want to call it that right now, is the fact that Cody represents, if other people want to see their favorite wrestlers make it over to WWE, that they have a chance to become champion. Like there's room for somebody else to be in that main event. Roman Reigns represents the last Vince-made champion. Were they going to give it to Cody? I still think they were going to do it even if Vince was in charge. But the story to go ahead and not give him the belt last year and for him to win it this time ultimately is the right decision. It was the right choice to make, and it means so much more now than it did. Because we did get a great year of the Bloodline storyline to go with after that. So I can't complain about that. I think what we got out of that was fine. Sure, people might have complained about Roman holding on to that belt for so long and like nobody's going to beat him. Well, that changes now. I mean, Cody is going to be someone that I don't think... Now, here's the difference. How long of a title run will they give him as a face? He is a white meat baby face. No doubt about it. He's going to be put out there as the face of the company now while Roman Reigns takes a break. And for Cody Rhodes, you have to think about what they're going to do then, now that he is Universal Champion. I mean, one of the things they have to consider now is that we're Raw and SmackDown. This is all like, aesthetics, but all, of course. But Damian Priest and Cody Rhodes are both featured on their separate brands. So does Cody Rhodes now move over to SmackDown in the interim? And he's no longer on Raw. I guess that's what happens. Because of how it was set. Because it was still Cody deciding who he wanted to face coming out of Royal Rumble. So maybe they do that. And that's what it is. And if that's the case, I don't know who they have right now that they would go and consider to be opponents. Who would be the list of contenders coming up for Cody Rhodes now after this? Because that's what you got to still come down to the fact that they still need to go and have contenders for their respective belts. And that's the part where the main event gets a little more interesting, where you have to build some stars to be that point. I mean, Cody Rhodes is the one of a kind because of all the career this guy has had. I mean, it still has to be somebody that's been around for a long time. I mean, you're still talking about the fact that Cody Rhodes and the career he's had, even with WWE, right? He was multi-time Intercontinental Champion. He was Tag Team Champions. And, goes back to 2006. He's part of that Ohio Valley Wrestling crop. And so it still comes down to the fact that he has such a long career he's done. Started early, by the way, and worked his way up to where he is now. 38 years old, so he's prime of his career, and all feels good right here. With everything that's come down, what do you do next? I mean, he competed everywhere before he came back. Worked at Wrestle Kingdom, worked Final Battle at Ring of Honor, worked Bound for Glory at TNA, and, was a world champion in Ring of Honor, IWGP US Heavyweight Champion, and, he did win the NWA World Heavyweight Championship at one point when Ring of Honor was partnering with them, and that's all great and good. It was like, well, there's a lot there to be said. Like, a lot of championships, the legacy of him being, a star that he's been. I don't think this makes any difference for any of his other compadres and from All Elite Wrestling to go ahead and make the jump. I don't think we get that. And I don't think that makes a difference for those that feel like there's the invisible, the forbidden door. I don't think that forbidden door comes open for those that think that the new era is going to go ahead and create that. No. I just think that for Triple H and Bruce Pritchard and the team there, I think what they're going to do right now is they need to go ahead and placate to the sports aspect of their business. So like with who are their stars and who they're going to put out there. They want to abandon a bit of what Vince's old methodology is. They absolutely want to go and kind of throw some of that away. Now, as for the booking of the match tonight, I mean, what they kind of went with was Triple H when he had his match with Sting at WrestleMania several years back, the one they had in San Francisco. And, they brought in all the the legends to come in and be a part of it. I mean, that makes sense. I get it. Say they were Kevin Owens and Stone Cold Steve Austin, right? And how they had to set up that match. So I had heard stuff already from Brian Alvarez. They were already talking about that John Cena and Undertaker were going to be at the event. And for them to go ahead and be in and how they were involved, again, all makes sense. That's fine. The interference of the Bloodline was, I really enjoyed the way they did that. I mean, I don't think anybody can really complain about how they did the interference. You basically gave us a clean 20-minute match. They started right at 10 o'clock almost. It looks like on my clock. 10 o'clock on the dot. Eastern. And then we go 20 minutes. And then we start getting the plunder. But the plunder doesn't really get so effective. Like, it's like, okay, Jimmy tries to do what he does. Jay comes in and neutralizes. Solo comes in, does quite a bit of damage. John Cena comes in and neutralizes. And then The Rock comes over, and The Rock neutralizes John Cena. And then The Rock gets neutralized by The Undertaker, which was a great back-to-back-to-back scenario. It's like that whole transition, the collage of wrestlers and legends coming in, that was cool. And it gave us everything about the Bloodline that could have been in the match, that could have helped to keep Roman Reigns from losing that belt. But after everything was said and done, Roman Reigns then gets in, and, Cody getting the finish. He almost got him last time. And now we get it done, and it's like, okay, it makes sense. 33 minutes for the match, and that's including the plunder. I mean, it works. I mean, you have to just figure out what else to do. It's one of those things where Vince McMahon and his team, when Vince was there, why was he always apprehensive on pulling the trigger on a title change? And why was it they were always kind of worried about what to do next? It was always like they creatively always wrote themselves into a web. They always got them stuck in a situation they had to figure themselves out of. And they never did a good job of getting out of that. And that's the part that I thought was what Triple H and the team did good tonight. Like, that was the ultimate answer. I mean, I've been asking about that for a couple of years. So how do you go ahead and write and book Roman to lose the belt? I mean, the same thing with Gunther. We got both of those answered this weekend. It wasn't so much where Sami Zayn, the way they built it up could have gotten there. I thought they could have done a better job with it. But the reasoning and the logic of Sami Zayn winning, totally fine with that. Totally fine with that. We got a couple of those kind of moments, because Bayley winning over Iyo Sky tonight, that was a feel-good moment. People just felt like, well, she should go ahead and get her comeuppance off of Damage Control. they finish the story. They finish the story. It's done. And Bayley gets to go ahead and have the championship now. Great for her. But now what do you do next? I mean, that's the part where you finish it off tonight. Wonderful. But for the new era to really be a new era, you got to figure out how to go and start building your own organic crop of main eventers or potential stars that are going to make their comeuppance that will be contenders for Cody Rhodes because of the status of that belt. Because think about it like this. What we don't want to see is the prestige that's been built by Gunther on the IC title. The prestige has been put on that Universal title by Roman Reigns. Those should not be put by the wayside. They should not be diminished. People need to realize that, listen, you just don't make transitional champions out of Damian Priest and Cody Rhodes. I mean, Cody Rhodes especially. You just can't do it. And more importantly, I think one thing that's got to be learned by this new era, they need to learn how to build up matches without belts. Because that is obviously their problem they have right now. When I look at AJ Styles and LA Knight tonight, that was filler. Was it a good match? Sure. Could you have main evented SmackDown with it? Sure. But does it mean, did that warrant a WrestleMania match? Absolutely not. Jimmy and Jay, you could build that to be a WrestleMania caliber match, but it wasn't. And it's not like you could just build that together and do nothing. Dominic and Ray, you have a built-in storyline. You just can't just reheat it like in the microwave for a minute and think it's going to just come back and work and make wonders. No. So that was the problem. They need to be able to build stories without belts. And for some of these of my podcast wrestling brethren that think we need to build more belts, let's give another women's title out there. No, we don't. The NXT now, the women have a women's, North American title. No, stop. Not more belts. No, less belts. You want to have a mid-card belt you already have for the men? That's fine. You've already had that with the IC and US titles. We don't need more. And for the women, do we need more? No, I don't think so. The women, you don't have that. I don't know if you have that large of a women's roster anyway. And if you do, you're not using them that much. You're not using them half and half. And that's the part that also kind of sticks in my craw is the fact that one women's match tonight. That's it. You would think with everybody else, you could have multiple women's matches. But when they had of this week, and I'm not trying to go ahead and be out here and be some kind of sanctimonious kind of person, no, but the two women's titles matches, and then we had that 6-man tag that was filler because you didn't build up to anything. On your television, on your pay-per-views, you have to start building storylines that are going to be where the storylines will make enough heat to build. Now, let me tell you, a great example that leads out of WrestleMania will be CM Punk and Drew McIntyre. There's not even a question there. But there's so much there to build into the storyline, baked into the cake of their past, that they're playing off of that, you just can't help but build that storyline. CM Punk and Drew McIntyre did not need a belt. Now, the way they built that into the WrestleMania storyline right now, I was waiting. Okay, so Seth Rollins loses clean. And there's more to be said about Seth Rollins as well after this, but I'll hold that out in a second. But back to Drew McIntyre, CM Punk. So when Drew McIntyre wins clean on Seth Rollins, 10 minutes, 30 seconds, and then Drew McIntyre has to mock CM Punk on commentary. So the fact that CM Punk was on commentary and he was out there for that match, CM Punk served perfect purpose for being in commentary. And then he set everything up to when we saw Drew McIntyre take things too far on the taunting, which he's been on social media about it. He's been everything about it. It's been great. That storyline has been fantastic. There's so much heat right there between those two. We're all chomping at the bit to see Drew McIntyre, CM Punk, whenever that's going to be. Okay. So for that, you create the reason for Damian Priest to come and cash in and successfully cash in and become World Heavyweight Champion. You wanted to book something so that Drew McIntyre and CM Punk has something good to work off of once they get back in it. Okay? CM Punk's incorporation to this, and now Damian Priest takes this belt. Awesome. There's a lot to be said about what happens with Damian Priest now when we watch on Raw Monday night. So Drew McIntyre, I mean, he's going to have Seth Rollins to deal with. He's going to have Drew McIntyre to deal with. He's going to have a lot of people to deal with. But the dynamic of seeing the Judgment Day coming out tomorrow, probably first thing on Raw, is Rhea and Damian both presenting their belts and doing a promo to start off the night right off the bat. I mean, Judgment Day looks strong here. You drop the tag team belts in return for a World Heavyweight Championship. Perfect. Another feud with no belts. The Pride and the Final Testament. You had to put so much plunder in there. Okay, there's not enough amount of kendo sticks and tables and chairs, and Bubba Ray Dudley as a special guest referee, and Snoop Dogg on commentary. WWE, could somebody have told you that about 3 or 4 years ago, Roy Jones Jr. fought Mike Tyson on pay-per-view, and Snoop Dogg did commentary on that, and he was god-awful, and he was god-awful here. You just can't put him in this. I understand you have the sponsorship, but man, you need to go ahead and, put a muzzle on him, because he is just not good on commentary. You want to get him out there for a little bit of whatever, but like the commentary thing was just a bad idea. And I get it. It was like, okay, short match, 8 minutes, whatever, but he was not good. But I kind of figured that. When I heard he was going to be on, when I saw him on commentary, I was like, oh my God, we're going to get this again. So that I could have lived without. Otherwise, I'm not caring about that. The Kevin Owens, Randy Orton dynamic was really cool as the triple threat really kind of focused on them. And Logan Paul obviously being hated like crazy over there, which is, justifiably so. The obvious stabs on Pride. I mean, the crowd must be South Park fans, because they were trying to do as much as they could just to go and shit on Pride as much as they could. And they were really going after him. Overall, night 2, much better night. We had a lot of title changes. That works great. 3 title changes tonight. People were really happy about those. I think one of the things that's going to be a consistent thing right now going forward is that, sure, you're going to have titles that are going to be the conduits that will create storylines and create feuds. Fine. But that just can't be every show. We have to have feuds that matter without belts. Because any wrestler out there, they can't just be based on what belt they're carrying. It can't just be about that. They have to change that up now. And that's something they got to work on. Because let me tell you too, some of these championships they have right now, where some of them are based off of how, let's not forget about how they got some of these matches put together. The IC title match was on like a fatal 5-way? You had the 6-pack tag team ladder match qualifier tournament with all these teams being part of this, right? You put an 8-person tag team tournament to be able to get 4 teams to be part of all this, right? And then, some of these groups that did not win, they got to get, they got to get basically consolation matches where they were able to go and get another match after what was done. Like, let me put it like this, okay? Okay. Because think about it like this. When you're thinking about LWO, they lose in the first round of the qualifier tournament for the 6-pack tag team ladder match. But you know what? They're still going to get a match somewhere on the pay-per-view. Or they're going to be still involved in something with the pay-per-view anyway. Same thing with Legado del Fantasma, same thing. Like, of course, it's their underlings, but still you get like the whole story of that. And with Street Profits being a part of this, and you know what? They still get it being a consolation match in the Philadelphia Street Fight. Doesn't make a difference. Like, if you're losing and you're not coming out ahead and you don't have momentum coming in, why are you getting a match? Why are you getting a match on WrestleMania? Like, we got rid of the Andre the Giant Battle Memorial. That's now put on SmackDown, but like, it shouldn't matter here. Like, you need to go and determine who's supposed to be WrestleMania worthy. And matches are supposed to be WrestleMania worthy. And the pay-per-views, the same thing goes. 3 weeks, you got Backlash France. Then remember, you got to go and do Germany. You also got to do Saudi Arabia. You got to have all these European tour, all these world events coming up right now. And you're like, you need to go and build them up and make them important. And you got to have some matches to go with those. So now you're not going to have Roman Reigns out there. Who are you going to have that's going to step up, that's going to make those matches big? So the new era now, hey, okay, so Triple H, TKO Group Holdings, they have full control. All right. Made the biggest deal about, oh, no Vince. Stephanie's out there and she's, pointing to Paul, pointing to Triple H. Because Triple H is running with the ball right now. He can't drop it. Okay. And then Triple H just said, oh, he got a 5-year plan. All right, great. But I'll still be around doing this damn podcast. And I will have my thoughts. And we'll start them up on Wednesday. Do it all over again. So get ready this Wednesday night. I will welcome people into WrestleMania off season. We get started. And we got pay-per-views coming up in 2 weeks. Rebellion and Dynasty coming up for AEW and TNA Saturday or Sunday nights. So we got that coming up to go and go for too in 2 weeks. I'll do post shows for both. But until Wednesday, we'll come back and get back all of this together. I hope you enjoyed the WrestleMania recaps and come back for another Wrestling Zero podcast because wrestling needs us.